It's a great pleasure to talk with you this morning. Alexis and I are sharing this session, and I've got my alarm set. So when you hear my alarm go off in the background, it's because I don't want to take up Alexis's time. Could I start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we're all meeting this morning and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Thank you, Evie, for that great introduction. I am a bit embarrassed that somehow I've sent you, or somehow you've got a very old bio from me. So I haven't been in that role for many, many years now. So that's my apologies. So let's see, making sure that this is going to work. So I'm happy for questions along the way. There's not many of us to ask questions. I also have embedded some activities here on the assumption that some of you might have been in rooms with colleagues, but we'll just skip over those as we go. So let's have a look here and see how we go, and I'll share my screen. Can somebody give me a thumbs up that you're seeing the PowerPoint? Great, thank you very much. And so because I can see your names, I'm actually going to call on you at different times to talk about things. Okay, so I've done my acknowledgement country. So my role is actually as the Executive Director for Early Childhood across the state. And everything that we're doing at the moment is about making sure that children have a great start in life. We know the importance of the early years. The early years count. Some of you have seen some of our website and our work that we've done over years about that the early years count. And if we're going to make a difference, we've got to make sure that we start working right at the start. So that's probably the genesis of some of the work that we've been doing. Our ideas that if we get it right at the start, we're going to get it right. So this is my first question. Alexis, can you just tell me, are you seeing the whole screen, or are you seeing, is the PowerPoint all okay? Yep. So I don't know how I've ended up with all your faces all over my PowerPoint, but that's okay. So in the first 5 years, if we know that it's really important, but we also know that across the world, early childhood is considered as birth to the age of 8. We've done some work across Queensland where we've really said that kindergarten into prep, into year 1 and into year 2 is really important. So why do we say that that work is important? Well, we know that the first 5 years is critical for brain development. We know that the first 5 years is a really strong predictor of the things that happen in a child's life in those first 5 years is critical in terms of their long-term outcomes, such as health outcomes, workforce outcomes. Some of you might know about the Dunedin work that's happening in New Zealand, where they are tracking people who are 60, but they started tracking those children right from the start. We also know that from a money perspective, that if we intervene and get it right in the first 5 years and in the first 8 years especially, which is also, of course, prep year 1 and year 2, that we have the greatest return in investment. So the notion of saying that $1 spent now in the early years and making sure that we get teachers really understanding child development, that we have strong pedagogical practices in the early years, will save us in the long run as a community. And that when we intervene and we develop programs for our most vulnerable and disadvantaged families in these first 5 years or in the first 8 years, we actually get the biggest return on investment. So we know that the gap is widening, and this is a PowerPoint I developed early in the year for this session, probably when COVID was just hitting, and that's probably a lot of work that we're starting to see across Australia about, is the greatest impact going to be now about the world in early childhood getting bigger between the children who have and the children who have not, so the vulnerable and disadvantages. So it's good sense to get it right in the first early years, because it's the time when our brain or children's brains are developing most. It's the time we get greatest return on our investment. Spending $1 there saves us dollars later on. And it's also our time that we can make a biggest difference to our most vulnerable community. So I'll let you read this for a couple of minutes, but really what we're saying here is that we need to know that this is a crucial foundation, and that if we focus on the capabilities that each child brings to school and support their transition, that's going to make sure they get a great start in life, but a great start in learning. We've got to make sure that there are consistent and aligned practices across early childhood and schools. So what I want to start to hone down now is from that broader notion of birth to the age of 8 and come down into that K into the P. This is not about making kindy more like school, and it's not also about saying that schools should be telling kindergartens how to do their work. It's actually about that transition time, and it's about the continuity of learning. So many of you have probably been through the time, and I assume you jumped in onto this workshop because you could be in that K or that P space. Many of you have been through that time where we've had time that transition is about an event at the end of the kindy year or at the start of the school year, to then it becomes a process. So it's about, well, we'll start transitioning the children in term 4, and then really where we want to be now is that second dot point there, that in fact we're building relationships and continuity of learning. So we wanted to look at how do you absolutely build that continuity of learning so that children's experiences in kindergarten are built on as we get into prep. We want early childhood services and schools to develop shared understanding. What does quality teaching look like in the early years? We don't want kindy to be a whole pedagogical approach and then schooling be a different pedagogical approaches. We want our schools to acknowledge and build on the teaching and pedagogical approaches of kindergarten, and ensuring that children feel more connected and comfortable, because it's not only going to support their academic transition or their transition about learning, it's also going to support their sense of well-being, connectedness, all of those things that we know are also attributes of learners. If children get a good transition or a successful transition, we know that it has long-term outcomes. But we know that leadership is crucial in this space. It's crucial from, if anybody's online today who's an educational leader in the early childhood sector, but it's also really crucial for principals and for our deputy principals in the early years, that we actually understand about that continuity of learning and alignment. Because if we get it right, then there's benefits for children. So we want to put children at the centre of this work. We want that children's learning is continuous. We want families to experience a positive transition to school. I apologise to Alexis, who's heard this story before, but as a principal, for many, many years, I've seen 2 parents get to the front gate of my school and just literally, physically can't walk into the gate. Their own experiences of school, their own experience as a child, that school was not a positive experience for them. So what must that mean for their own children transitioning to school? We want our AEDC is happening again next year, our Australian Early Developmental Census, and we want to measure that more and more children are coming into school who are less vulnerable and adapting well to school. You'll notice there that I didn't talk about ready for school, and as a departmental senior officer, I know we've still got some work to do about principals and schools understanding that our work in this area is not about schools being ready, children being ready for school. I try every day to make a difference around saying it's not about saying that this child needs to be able to know their name or count to 20. It's not about school readiness. It's about schools being ready for children and building on their learning experiences in kindergarten. This is a book that's a very easy read. It's Heckman, and this goes back to one of the slides that I had before, but he talks about actually, he's an economic rationalist. He's the one who says that it's actually good economic policy to start spending money more in the early years because we get the greatest return. He'll actually say that the work that we're doing to make sure that kindergarten is high quality, that the kindergartens are teaching the Queensland Kindergarten Learning Guidelines, that schools are building on that learning, he would suggest that sometimes even that's starting too late. Because if we give every child a great start in those first 5 years, and then we want every child to have been succeeding in prep to year 12 once they get into formal schooling, there is this space that we want to make sure is great for kids as well. And this is where our K2 work comes in. Our K2 work comes in to bridge that gap between children who've had the early years learning framework, because some of them have been in care since they were babies. They've then had their 600 hours of kindergarten, and then they start to transition into the Australian curriculum. So it's giving every child a great start into making sure that every child has the chance to succeed. So I thought that you might have been in rooms with other people. I'm going to stop sharing now. Instead of turning and talking, anything that people want to ask at this time, we've got plenty of space for people to ask questions. No? Okay. So you'll see that I've given myself some little times along the way to say, well, this is for me to take a breath. So the first bit of that was to give you some theoretical framework about why we're doing this work. We want to do this work to ensure that children have a successful start to formal schooling, building on the great work that's happening in early childhood and in kindergartens, and that leadership is really crucial here. So if nobody's got any questions, I'll go back to sharing my screen, and I'll go to this one. And I'll assume that you're turning and talking or checking your emails. So what are the government and departmental priorities for us? This is very simply a bit of a review. So that the Queensland government wants to give all children a great start. We want early learning opportunities that are really contextual to children, and we want families to be engaged. We have 3 targets as a government. We want to do all the work around giving children a great start to improve wellbeing prior to school. So that's this piece of work that I'm talking about today around how we've built leadership capacity. We know that we want that a baby's health birth weight is a really important predictor about whether a child gets a great start. So we want to increase the number of babies born healthier. And we also want to increase our immunisation rates. That is a really strong predictor and a really strong focus for our government. I'll just whip through these pretty quickly because this is where I can save a bit of time when we start a bit later. But I don't know if you know that we want babies in Queensland being born between 2.5 kilograms and 4 kilograms. That's a healthy birth weight for children or babies. And the more children we can get born in that healthy birth weight, the better predictor we have of children coming into our schools who are not vulnerable, who are adapting well to schools. This is our immunisation rates. Queensland does really well with immunisation rates, but it's another strong part of our government priority. But this is ours. In our last census, we had 26% of children in prep in Queensland, and this is just not government schools, who were determined by their prep teachers as being vulnerable in one of those 5 domains. So at age 5, in May of prep, over a quarter of our students in schools were determined to be vulnerable. The Queensland Government wants to get that down to 22% by 2025. So that actually means that we need to do a lot of work around reducing vulnerability or increasing well-being. The prep is the year where this census happens. If we can make sure that we get 100% of children going to kindergarten, our kindergartens are high quality, but the big part of that then is that schools understand the kindergarten guidelines, that schools build on the learning that children have had, and that they get a great start in prep, and that prep builds on kindergarten. We know we can make a difference. As you can see from this slide, we've got a lot of work to do. In 2009, in Queensland, the national census showed that nearly 30% of children were vulnerable. And then we got it down to 26%, but we've got 2 more census and we have to get that down a long way. Christy, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you have any idea why we as a government, or as a state, sorry, were able to reduce such a strong percentage of children who were vulnerable from 2009 to 2012? Any ideas, Christy?
No, sorry, I don't actually have any ideas of how that's been achieved.
Anybody got any ideas? What happened at that time? You're all probably too young to know. Judith or Janice? No?
I think the EYLF came in, the QKLG also came in around those times, and then the NQF as well with the NQS was all in the pipeline in that timing. I think that started happening.
I think whoever said that, that's absolutely right. So we looked at what did quality look like in early childhood, but in Queensland specifically, we introduced universal access to kindergartens. So we built all those kindergartens on state schools and Catholic schools, and we went from about 27% of children going to kindergarten with a qualified early childhood teacher to 95%. So we can see that kindergarten does make a difference, but it is quality kindergarten. It's a quality kindergarten program, and we say in Queensland, as does nationally, but we're a bit stricter, that it's a quality kindergarten program with a 4-year trained early childhood specialist, 4-year, or somebody who at the moment is considered to be an ECT. And that's a big part for us because that's what Alexis is going to talk about soon.
Sorry, Grant, Judith has also mentioned that concentrated efforts and programs for Indigenous children were around that time. Yep.
Yep, so Alexis has been involved with that for a long time. So we also had our pre-prep, so children in our remote and Indigenous communities, our discrete Indigenous communities, we had strong work there. The federal government also brought in some childcare relief programs where children could access quality early childhood for free. So thanks, Judith. And what I suppose, if you want to, so far my main message has been that we're doing all this work in the early childhood sector. Schools are doing great work in age-appropriate pedagogies in prep in year 1 and year 2. But my job over the last 3 years has been this concentrated effort about really saying, but the next bit of lift that we have to do is the lift between building on that work in early childhood and continuing that work in schools. So I was a primary principal for a little bit of a time and for some time, and I'd get really angry when the secondary principals up the road would say, oh, forget everything you know, you're in high school now. But then I went to be a high school principal, and it is a very tempting thing to say, oh, well, we sort of treat these children as blank slates. So primary principals have been angry about that for years, that secondary principals have done it to them, but they bring children in from kindergarten. And so it's my work to keep saying to the 1,300 primary principals in Queensland, you need to understand kindergarten, you need to understand the learning guidelines that these children have been exposed to, you need to use your transition statements well, and you need to build on this work, not treat these children as a blank slate. But I think I'd rather my Director General to say that to you instead of me. So let's see if this works.
I'm excited to talk to you about the important work you are undertaking in the early years from kindergarten to year 2. As a department, we know the early years has a significant impact on children's learning and development. We also know the important role families and community play as co-contributors to their child's learning. This is why continuity of learning for children as they transition from kindergarten to school is essential. It is important that schools are ready for children and families feel welcomed and part of the school community from their first day. When children enter your school gate, they come with prior knowledge and a diverse range of experiences, with many having attended an early childhood service. We know that early childhood services build strong relationships with families and are focused on supporting children's learning and development. They encourage the skills, dispositions, and knowledge children need to begin their formal years of schooling. We want to acknowledge this prior learning and continue to promote these strong relationships with early childhood services, families, and communities so that we can make informed decisions about each child's learning at school. This is why we have the decision-making tool to guide our inquiries so that schools, early childhood services, and families can make decisions about what is best for the children in the community in which they live. We have a lot to be proud of with the work we have been undertaking across our regions to ensure children and families have the best start to school possible. With the implementation of the decision-making tool and school improvement planning processes, we are supporting thousands of Queensland children to have a positive transition to school and learning across the early years that is based on strong early years pedagogy. We are now seeing a mix of universal and targeted strategies being implemented in communities across the state. These strategies are strengthening relationships between early childhood services and schools, helping us develop shared understandings about children and informing our teaching and learning practices. I encourage you to share with colleagues, community members and families how you are ensuring the early years count. Talk to colleagues, friends and others so they know that when we make the early years count, we are doing the following: sustaining momentum for the value of the early years, acknowledging the wisdom children have gained in the formative years prior to school, supporting learning progress of all young learners, and recognising learning as a continuum and acknowledging the contribution of schools and early childhood services. All Queensland children deserve a great start to learning. Your role is to determine how this great start will take shape in your region.
So I'm not sure where you'll come from in terms of, what I mean of that is what your role is. But if you're a primary school principal, if you're on this because you're a primary school principal, I hope your ARD has showed you that video. That's the video we've made for principals to say to them, it is your responsibility to connect to your early childhood service, your kindergarten programs, not tell them what to do, but how do you build on the work that they've done. If you're a primary teacher sitting on this session today and you're in the early years, what are you doing to make sure that you understand the kindergarten learning guidelines, how you can build on those successful transitions? I'd really challenge you to, if you're a primary teacher, I'd challenge you to say to your principal, no, transitions isn't about the Wednesday mornings program in term 4. That's the transition events. But what are we going to do to make sure that children who've been to kindergarten, that we build on their learning? And even if they haven't been to kindergarten, how do we build on their development before they come to school? If you're a kindergarten teacher on this session today, you have absolutely my, I was going to say permission, but that's the wrong word. I'd like you to tell me if you're in a kindergarten and you're getting pressure. Oh, there's my alarm, but I've got 5 minutes to go before handing to Alexis. I want you to give me a call and tell me if the principal of one of my state schools is giving you pressure to start doing Jolly Phonics in term 4, or giving you a checklist. This is what children must do before they can come to school. This is about us saying to our kindy teachers, we value you, but we expect you to teach the Queensland Kindergarten Learning Guidelines. We expect you to write a strong transition statement, and we know that that's for parents, but it's also for the school up the road to build on the school down the road to build on the work that you've been doing. So we heard that from the Director General, and Alexis, I am just going to go for 7 more minutes because that was just my 8-minute warning bell. So I did have, as the next slide here, I thought some of you might have been in a room with other people, but is there anything that you can put in a chat room or something about what were the messages that you heard from the Director General? And if there's anything that you want to clarify, and Evie can let me know, but there's also the other bit there that you didn't hear him say to our principals in our state system, that children need to be ready for you. You heard him say, how are you going to build on the quality that's happening? Because we know that data is telling us this, that we can't control all of these things. Gestational age, we can't control how that baby's born at 33 weeks, but there is a very strong predictor between the gestational age of a baby and whether they'll be vulnerable when they get to school. We can't also, as educators, control birth weight, but there's another session going on today, and you might go to that one with some of Alexis and my colleagues, Kerry Giebel and Melissa Kidd, about the work that we're doing in our really disadvantaged communities, that we do want to stop parents smoking and mothers smoking while pregnant because it affects the birth weight. Birth weights of children affect their development and their brain development in the first 3 years, and then we have more children who are coming into schools vulnerable. But we can predict other things. We know that children in a high quality play group makes a difference. So we know about why we support principals to run play groups in their community, but not to take over a community play group, but be really, really clear about supporting community play groups, but building the quality of that. We also know that going to kindergarten is absolutely a predictive and a protective factor. So that's why I hold the responsibility of trying to get as many children into a qualified kindergarten as possible. And I absolutely know if we had 5 hours today, you'd tell me all the reasons why we need to make it free and more accessible to our vulnerable children. Can I just say, if you have your own children or you teach in a community kindergarten, children who are vulnerable, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children, children on a healthcare card, children from refugee and asylum seeker backgrounds, we as a government can basically make that free for children. So, if you're in a community kindy, I'm not talking about long day cares, and you're charging $40 a day, talk to me. We shouldn't be having to charge that much in community kindergartens. Kindergarten and free kindergarten is a really strong protective factor. And if children in kindergarten, we then know where they are to transition them well into school. And so I'll finish you with the so what. So the so what is that we can either say, and I hope that this works, Alexis, give me a bit of a thumbs up if this transitions, but we know that kindies and schools are different. Structurally, they're different. Kids go to kindy for 600 hours, they go to school. Contextually, they're different. We even know that they have different curriculums and pedagogies. But we name them differently. We talk about intentional teaching in kindy, and we talk about age-appropriate pedagogies in school. We can either see that as fragmentation and problematic, or we can start to see what are the links. So the links are, how do the curriculum guidelines and learning guidelines in kindergarten link into the Australian curriculum? We need to look at the enablers. What are the ways in which kindergarten and formal schooling are more alike, instead of saying how are they different? Because if we get that right and look at the enablers, we'll give every child in Queensland a great start in life. But the work that I wanted to talk about more today is moving our thinking from transitions being about Wednesday morning activities, but if we want to give every child in Queensland a great start to learning in the early years, it's about getting a high quality kindergarten program, transitioning those children, building on their continuity of learning into prep, getting our principals in our state schools to understand that children should not come to them ready, that schools need to be ready for them, for our prep teachers to understand age-appropriate pedagogies and developmental milestones, and involving families and giving families agency in that work, and then and only then will we look for the continuities between kindergarten and school, not the challenges, and we give every child a great start in the early years. So thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing my slide now and I'll go on to mute, but that's what I wanted to just, I suppose, put a provocation out there to you this morning. Is the context in which you're working building on continuity and learning, or is it not yet looked at? And are you working in a context that still sees kindergarten and schooling as a divide, or are you building them and giving every child a great start? So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Grant. That was very insightful and showing a lot of provocations there. Well, if anyone had any questions, or we'll leave it to right at the end so that Alexis can start. Yeah. Okay, great. Alexis, would you like to start your presentation? Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'd just like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we're all located today, and ask for their blessings and their wishes as we conduct our work on their country and be able to serve all children with the best intentions to create the best outcomes. So thank you everyone for joining us this morning. I will share my screen with you in a second. I'm obviously going to be talking to you about the Mentoring Early Childhood Teachers program. It has got a good alignment to the work that Grant's just been talking around in terms of building the skills and quality and knowledge of early childhood teachers in the early childhood sector. So we designed the Mentoring Early Childhood Teachers program a couple of years ago, based on, there's already a mentoring beginning teachers program in our state schooling system that has been in progress for many years. Grant would be able to tell us exactly how many years. And we modelled the early childhood program on it. So I'll just share my screen now and we'll get started on it.
While Alexis is sharing her screen, I'll just do a little bit of a segue there as well, if that's okay, Alexis. That I've talked a lot about quality, that going to kindy is really important, but quality kindergarten is really important. And the link for me is that workforce and the quality of our staff in the early childhood services is one of the biggest predictors about quality of the program. So that's that's the link for me. Alexis was starting there.
Thanks, Grant. So yeah, currently the Mentoring Early Childhood Teachers program is a pilot program, and it's being delivered in the Metropolitan and the Central Queensland regions. The aim of the program has got two focus. It's or foci. With consultation with the sector had taught us over the years through various workforce action plan reviews and various other ways that we have consulted with the sector, that it's been really difficult for early childhood teachers who are registered but are provisionally registered. They've been unable to progress to full registration. Because of the lack of access to another teacher, registered teacher, because often they are the only teacher in their service. The other cohort are the pre-service teachers, so the teachers that are actively working towards their early childhood degree. So they may or may not be the actual taken to be early childhood teacher in the service, but they are working towards completing their degree. So there's the two different cohorts there. So I'll just go back to that. I'm not very good at following the slides because I start talking and then I go on a different tangent. So we might get to a slide that I'll skip because I've already spoken about it. So just going back to the provisionally registered teachers cohort. So as I said, there was a number of teachers in the sector that were saying they can't move to provisionally to full registration. In the beginning, the program was actually called the Mentoring Beginning Early Childhood Teachers program. And we learned pretty much in the first couple of weeks, let's say a term, that it actually wasn't beginning teachers for our provisionally registered. We had some provisionally registered early childhood teachers that had been teaching for 10, 15, 20 years, and they were still at provisional level because of that lack of access to a fully registered teacher to support them through that process. So we dropped the beginning pretty quickly because, you know, I'm a teacher. I got my teaching qualification a long time ago. I wouldn't consider myself a beginning teacher, but I too was never one of those ones that progressed to full registration because of my lack of access to a fully registered. So yeah, so that cohort have joined. So there's some in Metropolitan region and there's some in the Central Queensland region. And in the last 12 months since the program's been operating, 14 of those teachers have progressed to fully registered. So we're really proud of that. There's an opportunity those teachers have never had before, and to be able to really reflect on their skills and knowledge of what they actually do each day in their programming. The progression from provisionally registered to fully registered the teachers need to evidence their skills and knowledge in the Australian teacher standards. So some of them were really quite nervous around that because they're so used to demonstrating their knowledge against the NQS and the EYLF and the QKLG. But when it comes to the professional teaching standards, they're a little bit nervous, the anecdotal data has told us so far. So it turned out that they had nothing to be nervous about. And I have had conversations with staff members at QCT who have said the early childhood provisional registered teachers from the early childhood sector have better evidence than those in schools because of the richness of their programming documentation that they provide to align to the learning frameworks. The pre-service teachers, the sector told us that many of the pre-service teachers upon graduation even did not have the confidence in the skills and knowledge that they needed to have to be able to work as an ECT in an ECEC setting. You know, I think the progression of your early childhood degree, if it's a 0 to 8 degree, you begin your degree looking at the 0 to 3 phase of early childhood education and care. By the time you finish your 0 to 8 degree, you're finishing with your most recent knowledge is school-based knowledge. So because you've had a school-based prac and you've been in a prep or a grade 1 or grade 2 or maybe even a grade 3 classroom for your last 2 or 3 pracs, especially if you are moving to in a 0 to 8 degree where you have to do your final prac in a school-based setting to be able to meet that that requirement to move to registration. You haven't looked at the early years learning framework for a while, for maybe 2 or 3 years, and as a student. So I remember when I was a student, if I had to look at the early years learning framework in my first or second year, I would say I would have forgotten it by the time I got to the end of my degree, because the focus has been on the Australian curriculum by that stage. So just a progression. So it's no wonder that some of those teachers who are not fully engaged working in the ECEC sector don't have the confidence in the early years framework when they graduate, because they haven't been using it. So the model of the pre-service program is to support those teachers to be more confident in their NQS, in the EYLF and the QKLG, so they are not only just graduates, but they actually have some confidence to do their role. Part of that is also around, for both cohorts actually, is to build and develop a professional network of our childhood educators. We probably all know that working in a service, especially if you're not in a service that's part of a big organisation, that it can be quite isolating. You've only got your own team members or your own staff members, and there hasn't been a lot of time to reach outside of your own service to be able to network. So this program has enabled various ways of other educators to meet with other educators that are experienced, and sometimes not sometimes, all the time, to engage and share in practice. So, like I said, I miss slides because I start talking. So lots of things I've already said are on this slide. So the consultation with the sector told us that the educators were looking for professional networking opportunities. So the mentoring program has been able to enable that. They're looking for continuous support to strengthen and maintain their skills and knowledge in their practice and in their pedagogy. And as I said, moving to full registration for those provisionally registered. So the overarching aim of the program was to, I think I've already said this, was to build their knowledge, to build their networks, to build their confidence, and to engage in a way that they've got continuous support that is either from within or from external to their own service. So I won't jump ahead. All the mentors were trained. QUT originally were the department's partner in developing the department's mentoring program. So we leveraged from their experience in that program and engaged them to customise an early childhood program for the mentors. So all mentors have undergone a training, which was around 2 days for the mentors of provisionally registered teachers. They came to Brisbane and did 2 days of training with QUT. For the mentors of the pre-service teachers, they came to Brisbane for 1 day of training with QUT. And then, so those mentors are fully trained mentors, and they also receive support. We have a lead mentor in each region, Metro region and Central Queensland region, and those mentors have got their support through those lead mentors as well. So again, so it's around supporting the provisionally registered and the pre-service teachers, but it's also for those experienced registered teachers who are mentors, that they've also got a support network and building a professional networking opportunity for themselves as well. The mentees have got a range of resources that have been made available to them for any topics that are related to their role. So obviously the NQS, curriculum and pedagogy, EYLF, all those things that we need are fundamentals to our role as an early childhood educator. And then that information is shared in a variety of ways with the mentees. So right now we've got 34 mentors in the program. We've got 46 mentees, and as I said earlier, 14 mentees have already progressed to full registration. You'll see obviously from those numbers that means that some mentors have more than one mentee. So some mentors by choice have said that they're willing to mentor more than one mentee, so some of them have two. Often they are not in their same service, especially in Central Queensland region, where geographically people are spread a long way away. So there, for example, might be a mentor in Rockhampton, but a mentee in Longreach. And the way that they've been able to engage in that relationship has been quite interesting. So I'll go into some of that in a minute. And also just in the last maybe 2 or 3 months, kind of just before COVID hit us, that we started getting some feedback around people in regions were contacting our lead mentors to tell them that they wanted to join this program, either as a mentor or as a mentee. So that's without any advertising. So that tells us that the professional networking the professional networking opportunities are working in action. So the word of mouth, and that's exactly what we wanted to find out. how do people reach out to other people, and they're actually doing it through the vehicle of this program. So yeah, that's been quite proud of that achievement for people wanting to come and join the program as a mentor or as a mentee. Yeah, like I said before, the mentoring arrangements can be, and you'll see from these two images, either two mentees or one mentee. So the ways that mentoring has happened. So the mentoring partnerships and the way mentoring is implemented is completely up to the mentor and the mentee, with the support of the lead mentor. So there is no rules around you must engage face to face, you must talk to each other once a week by phone. You have to, there's no rules around that, because we know the demands of our role as an early childhood educator in a service, especially if you are feeling isolated, that sometimes you're really busy and life gets in the way, you know, and, you know, so how do we make sure that mentoring is valuable? So we have left that to the mentors and mentees to negotiate. And we'll see here from these dot points on this slide is that if it's face-to-face, everyone values face-to-face. We know that everyone likes face-to-face teaching. We know that probably most of us sitting here on a screen today probably wouldn't be our preferred option. We probably would have preferred to be in the big hall at the school to be able to do this. But face-to-face obviously is valuable. Via technology, just how we're doing now. FaceTime has been, you know, a blessing, Zoom, and yeah, whichever way technology people can connect. Going to each other's services. So sometimes, you know, some educators have only ever seen their service. They haven't worked in another service, or it's too far away to go to. It's a long journey. So they make dedicated time to be able to visit each other's services, or to show each other their services via FaceTime and video when they're there. Yeah, I think I've said all those things about, you know, mutually acceptable strategies, and, you know, the numbers of mentors in the service and mentees in the service. I might just stop. Has anyone got any questions? Evie, could you just check for that for me? Is there anyone, any questions so far? Any comments?
Alexa, we have been having a chat behind the scenes. So Judith was telling everybody that she is one of these teachers, a registered teacher, and Judith, I don't know if you want to go off mute and tell your own story, but Alexis, I've offered that Judith contact me and you next week, because I think, Judith, you were sort of saying in your chat that it is very hard when you're a provisionally registered teacher in the EC sector to find a teacher who can either be more than 5 years trained to sign you off. And if I promise you that we will get you something, because this is the bit of this work, and in fact the principal of a local school, we've been encouraging them to come and sign all the forms to move you from provisionally to full registered. And it's actually part of our K2 work that gives that principal a better understanding of what they'd be looking for in quality kindergarten and early childhood services. So Judith, I gave you my email. Alexis is your person, and we're looking at expanding this trial, so you could be the first one we expand the trial outside of those two regions. So that's been the comments behind the scenes, Alexis.
Thanks, Grant. Does Tracy, do you have a question? I just saw you put your finger up. No, Tracy?
Oh, sorry, Tracy, you're just on mute.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Tracy.
I've been part of the. I joined the mentor program probably at July last year.
Hey.
But my mentor, she's wonderful. But she runs another centre, and I haven't seen her since probably the end of last year. And I'm having a lot of trouble. I've been talking to a lady called Susie.
Yeah.
And I found out since that my mentor has been ill.
Okay.
And I'm still waiting to hear back. Now, I'm on my second lot of provisional registration that runs out at the end of next year. So I'm in a bit of between a rock and a hard place. I don't quite know what to do.
So that's great that you've connected with Susie. So what I will do on Monday, Susie's actually on leave now because they have teacher conditions. So my email address is going and phone number is going to be at the end of this slideshow, Tracy. So I'll contact you on Monday, or you can contact me on Monday, and then we'll get some plans in process. I don't think you're alone there, that there's been some mentors that have obviously through COVID as well, especially in the rural and remote locations.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Been at risk. So yes, a few things have been put on hold in the last couple of months naturally. So yeah, happy to take your question offline, Tracy, and we can have a chat about that on Monday if you like.
Okay. Lovely. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, Alexis, Judith just said whether it's worth it, just because she was saying she was 69. And yeah, if you wanted to.
Very experienced teacher, Judith. We'd love to hear from you.
Because it is worth it. Because, sorry, Alexis, I'll say one more thing and then go on mute. The work that we've done here is that I wrote it in behind the scenes, Alexis, that in some ways society, and a lot of the research will tell us that society believes that when somebody is registered, it lifts the profession. So, you know, if each of us thought about that we were going to build a new house next week, we would want to go to somebody, an architect, who has got some level of registration, like there's some level of notion that this person has got a registration with a professional association. So Queensland doesn't require it at the moment to be a registered teacher to work in the early childhood sector. But part of this is a bit of a trial to see how hard is it to support teachers to become fully registered, and does it raise the profession? The last workforce action plan was very strong, that early childhood teachers tell us that they want to be seen as professionals, not childcare workers. So what Alexis has done an amazing job with in the last few years is, so by starting to look at getting people to be fully registered, does it raise the profession? Does the society see us as teachers, not carers, that sort of notion there? You know, we'd be really interested, Tracy, with stories like yours about you aren't probably required to become fully registered, but why do you want to become registered? And I don't mean that as in why would you? I mean, of course you'd want to. You want to say, I'm a professional and I want to become registered with the state's registration board, but we know that that's really difficult in some areas in early childhood, because who is it that mentors you and takes you through that process? And it's behoving on us to make sure that when we finish this trial at the end of this year, if what Alexis has done about us supporting and paying mentors to do that work, this is something we could look at more broadly across the state.
Thanks, Grant. That's right. The raising the professional standards, or not really the standards of professional perception of teachers, is definitely part of this. And we know that in other states and other jurisdictions that registration is mandatory for the sector. So, and they have a specific early childhood teacher registration group as a category of registration, you know, and different states have different ways of administering that and different requirements around that. But at the moment, there's no national requirement for early childhood teacher registration for the ECEC sector. So yes, there's been an ongoing discussion for a few years now at the policymakers level nationally. So, you know, as a purist early childhood teacher, you know, I would like to see that happen. However, you know, we have to long discussions and long in-depth discussions around how that, what the implications are for the sector around that. Moving on to the next slide. So we worked out and I say we, the royal we, our beautiful lead mentors worked out in the beginning of the program that an online space was needed to be able to collaborate. And and different mentoring partnerships have engaged in our online space as an option. Like we said, this program's a pilot, so there's a few different ways that that we have been able to provide mentoring support. And so some mentors and mentees have engaged in the online system through our learning place, which is our departmental learning space. So there's a little bit of mechanics behind the scenes to have non-departmental educators access to this, but our lead mentors have managed to work a way around that, which has been fabulous. And this is where a lot of resources are hosted. They're the resources that I was talking about in the earlier slide around, you know, the NQS and curriculum pedagogy and things like that. Oops, sorry, back that slide. That, yeah, sometimes there's been online webinars which Stephanie and Susie have hosted, or one of them have hosted and extended the invite to the other region. And sometimes that's for the mentors and the mentees together, sometimes they're for each group separately, and for the mentors it's around leadership and team building and communication, goal setting, all the things that we need to know as a leader. Sometimes we've had guest speakers or subject matter experts talk to the mentors and the mentees. And sometimes they've just been online conversations. So joining a conversation where their mentors and mentees have had the opportunity to be able to ask a subject matter expert anything they like about their particular has been well received.
Yeah, Alexis, we have a question. The learning place, is it for ECTs or in kindergartens? Is it available to them?
ECTs in kindergartens in the
learning place resource?
So if they're involved in the mentoring program, yep, they'll be able to have access to that. So if anyone's online today that is interested in being a part of the mentoring program, either as a mentor or mentee, my contact details are at the end. So yeah, we'd love you to contact us if you're interested in doing that and to be able to get access to the resources. As we said, it's a pilot program at the moment, and we're undergoing a review and evaluation of the benefits of the program currently, so that, like Grant said, we can make some decisions later this year around the best way forward with the mentoring program and how it can have most impact for the sector. Oh, so impact, there you go. I gave myself my own segue. What's been the impact for the mentees? So we conducted a survey of the mentors and mentees for them to be able to tell us what have been the strengths of the program, the benefits, and what difference in change of practice it's been for them. Every mentee has said that their confidence and knowledge and their sense of professionalism has grown in the up to 12 months that they've been in the program. So we're really proud of that. That was one of our outcomes of the program. We wanted people to feel more skilled and capable to be able to do their work as an ECT. So that's amazing that every single one of them noted an increase in their confidence. As I said before, that some of the PRTs were nervous about undertaking the process because they didn't know about what evidence they would need to gather, but it has turned out that they've been able to gather their evidence really easily to move to full registration. And like I said before, QCT have said their evidence far outweighs quality compared to other. I'm sure they wouldn't say that to primary teachers. I think they probably say the primary teachers have got great evidence as well. But I think just the richness of the EYLF and QKLG you know, enables in programming has enabled these teachers to easily demonstrate their skills and knowledge in that. And all the other mentors reported that there was a lot of importance placed on the value by their mentors, that they were as mentees or as, I'm not going to say inexperienced teachers, because like Judith, there's lots of experienced teachers out there who were part of the program as mentees, that their knowledge and value of their profession and their skills has been acknowledged by the mentors, that, you know, that whether they've got 1 year experience or whether they're a pre-service teacher or 15 years experience, that everybody comes with some strengths. So, and, you know, and we're all on a continuous journey of learning and developing, and we don't stop learning. So I'd love to be able to dig in later about what did the mentors learn from the mentees, you know, because especially with teachers like Judith, who have got all these years of experience, she may have potentially could get a mentor that has less years of experience than her, but is a registered teacher. So I think it's two-way. And I've often said that some of my best teachings have been from my students or from my children in my kindy group. you know, so, you know, it doesn't have to be the knowledge holder or the person with the certificate that says they have a qualification that teaches you. So really interested in that. So I'll just let you read these 2 little quotes from 2 mentees around what the benefits for them have been. I think the key aspect of both of these quotes has been the opportunity to meet and to engage with other professionals. So just goes to highlight that the world of early childhood traditionally has been quite isolating regardless of where you're located. So even if you were in a service that was in the middle of Brisbane, that you are still quite isolated if you were in a standalone service, if you didn't have wraparound support from a larger organisation or from, you know, area managers or, you know, for other different governance structures around services. So I think it doesn't really matter if you're at Eidsvold in central Queensland or whether you're in Ashgrove, that you can be isolated wherever you are. So the opportunity to engage with another professional. I know sometimes too, you don't want to talk to the other professionals in your service. You want to talk to somebody outside of your service for a different perspective. So I think that's been one of the other benefits of this program, as we can see from these 2 quotes from the mentees. Oh, did I go the wrong way? Let me see. Yeah, I did. And for the mentors, we also asked in that survey for the mentors to rate their confidence in their ability to mentor. So, and we worked out too that on that, in that survey, that their level of confidence had no correlation to their years of experience. So, and you can see from reading that, you know, some mentors that had 10 to 19 years experience only rated themselves a 3 out of 10 in terms of their confidence to mentor, because they'd never had the opportunity to learn what it meant to mentor someone. And I think there's a difference between teaching, coaching and mentoring. You know, so they might have been great teachers and they might have been able to teach other educators how to teach, but how do you mentor? What does mentoring mean as opposed to teaching and leading? So yeah, so that was really, really interesting data. But again, when we surveyed them, they had all agreed that attending the mentoring training that QUT hosted completely flipped their knowledge around and their skills and confidence in their ability to go out and mentor. You'll see in one of these quotes here that there is a really experienced, fully registered teacher in the Central Queensland region who has been mentoring informally for years to get teachers to move them from provisionally registered to registered. And I think it's in this quote here, she may have even said, I was fumbling through the process. Yeah, she has got it there. I was fumbling through the process of mentoring these other PRTs, but after the training, she had a system, or she had ways that she could actually do that in a more cohesive and more planned way, in a way that met the mentee's needs as well. So really valuable sometimes that, you know, as early childhood teachers, we generally, I think there's a culture of early childhood teachers that we can just do it and we'll do it and we'll find our own way and we'll find our own knowledge and we just do the best we can. And then it's not until you have an opportunity to be able to get some coaching of your own that then you're able to be a better coach and mentor for somebody else. We also asked some services, so around what the impact has been on their service. So, and one nominated supervisor has reported here that her early childhood teacher was able to move to full registration, which is an opportunity that the service has never had before. And without that they, like again, go back to the isolation event, working in a long daycare centre, that ECT has then felt supported around that. She's developed a professional network. And in turn, that's been able to impact on practice in their service. So from having a mentor and mentees that have had more engagement with other support has on a service level, there's been service level change. I won't read through all of these, there are lots of dot points, but one of the regulators in one of the regions, she had anecdotally reported back that she had seen significant changes in the quality of a service as a result of staff being involved in the mentoring program. So they were able to see that the educators were now talking with each other within their rooms, that their environments looked better, they had better quality equipment, there was a positive culture, whereas before they were not engaging, they were not being professionally supportive of each other. The ECT was sharing knowledge across the service, and just general information, general practice change around the national quality standards around their quality area too, and being clean and more hygienic, and they'd put better systems and processes in that because the ECTs were more understanding and had dedicated more time to concentrating on quality outcomes. Yeah, so yes, just general practice change, holistic. And that, I think, because of the nature of our early childhood sector, is that our benchmark has been the national quality standard and our assessment and rating process and our monitoring compliance process. So I think it's really valuable for services to hear some positive feedback from regulators to say, I've actually noticed. You know, the regulators aren't just coming in with their big stick to you know, think that every time they walk in that they're actually looking for things that are wrong. They're actually looking for change, and they're looking for positive aspects as a result of the impacts of the programs. There you go. I went through that. That's because I talked beyond my slides. So I'm sorry if I talked a little bit quickly, because sometimes I tend to do that. Has anybody got any further questions at this point, just before we finish off?
There was just something to add, Alexis. Judith and Christy both definitely want to get involved in the program.
Great.
Great news.
Lovely. So I'll just keep this slide up then for a couple of minutes so that you can record those details. I'll just note that, you know, Susie and Stephanie are both on school holidays at the moment. Their positions are school-based positions or school teacher positions. So they won't be available for the next 2 weeks. So you're probably best to give me a call on that number, 35136672, or that email address there, ecec.mentoring@qed.qld.gov.au. So I'll just leave that up for a minute for you to record that. I'm happy to take your call at any time. Amanda Edwards also, who is my program officer in my team, she does the lion's share of the work of this program. So if I'm not available, Amanda will definitely be able to answer your calls. But I'd really love to hear from anyone who's interested and wants to know more about the program and how you can be involved in it. So at the moment it is Metropolitan Region and Central Queensland Region. If you're not from those regions, please give me a call. I still want to hear from you. Like I said, it's a pilot program at the moment that's running as a pilot for the rest of this year, and we'll continue to review and evaluate that program for us to be able to make decisions about next year. But yeah, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, Alexis, Christy is, so she would like to have access to the program. She's found it difficult to find a mentor in the far north Queensland area. Yeah.
I can't wait to speak to you on Monday, Christy. That will be fabulous.
Yeah.